Okay, there was somebody who wanted to see it, but it was in a different time zone, so they could, that'd be helpful. Cool, thank you. Let's move on. I'd like to welcome our 3 people who are going to share today. And what we've asked them to share is what's the purpose of their research and why grounded theory is a good fit. And the first person I've asked to share is Pippa. And then we have Hannah, and then we have Nikki. So thank you so much, ladies, for putting yourself out there. And it's worth saying we are all works in progress, and this is not a Viva. We're all sort of on the way, on the route, and we're finding our way. So we're being kind and learning from each other. So that's kind of the approach. So we've asked them to speak for sort of 5 or 6 minutes or so, and then we're going to think of some questions or think of any comments, and we can share those together. They can go in the chat box. Or we'll just open the floor as well. And I think Henry's keeping an eye on the chat box too. So brill. So without further ado, I think I'm going to ask Pippa if she would like to. Is that okay? Okay, cool. So I'm going to put my clock on, and I'll give you a warning at about between 5 and 6 minutes ish, approximately, and then I'll give you a 1 minute warning if that's all right.
Do that, because I've not practiced this or anything, so
that's fine. No, it's beautiful. It's
just chunked together.
Perfect. Lovely.
Excellent. Right. So my name's Pippa, and I'm at the Cambridge ARU, and I'm a speech and language therapist by background. I'm an allied health professional, and my research title at the moment is an explanation of the development of a collective allied health professions identity. As you can see on the bottom there, there's 14 different allied health professions. We all have our own unique identities, but we're also under the umbrella of a title called Allied Health Professions. So I'll just take you on a tour of my thinking of all of this. So we're 14 different professions. 2007 was the launch of the first NHS England strategy for allied health professions, and that was the first time it kind of formally got put under that title, and that brought us together as that collective. And the second iteration of that strategy was launched last year, and that highlighted that there's a real problem with retention within the allied health professions, and that's in the NHS as a whole as well. But it's recognising that we're losing allied health professions, especially those who are under the age of 35 and that have been in the NHS for less than 5 years. So we've got a real retention problem. And in response to that, the strategy is all about, fostering this sense of belonging and making people feel like they have a sense of identity. But the bit that's missing is we don't know what that identity is. We don't know how these individual professions identify as, do they identify as allied health professions, and how does that process form? So that's how that was the purpose, and what I wanted to understand was the process of that development of that identity through the lens of those people experiencing it, so through the allied health professions themselves. And that's really important to me, because I'm now a chief allied health professional, so I lead the teams, and the learning from this would be incredibly influential in how I lead my teams, but ideally then going on to influencing national policy, and retaining our staff, giving them a better experience, and by doing that, ultimately improving patient experience. We know that those two are really closely linked. Happy staff is happy patients. So whistle stop tour, just looking at my research paradigm, I didn't even know that grounded theory existed, had no idea until I joined up in 2019. I was spat out of into the NHS definitely as a post-positivist. My speech and language therapy training was very much, that was the only kind of approach, but actually in practice, I'm a relativist, and that's where I stand now ontologically, and I know that that's very much based on the patient's experience. They might all have the same condition, but they experience it differently. They bring their different beliefs, their family and social contexts. So that's very much shaped me. And then epistemologically, that's linked closely to my ontological stance, is subjectivism, recognizing that knowledge is acquired through those multiple meaningful realities. And then my axiology is value laden, so acknowledging the influence of my values and beliefs on how that shapes the research and its ultimate outcomes. And that all then joins up nicely into my philosophical position, which is as a constructivist. And for that, then I'm looking for an interpretivist approach to answering my research question. So the things I looked at initially were ethnography, and I thought that might be a good fit because I'm kind of looking at a culture, a big group, but actually it's not just one big group, it's 14 different little groups that might make up a big group, or it might not do. And it didn't really answer, that approach didn't really connect to what I was looking for, because I was looking for something that would expose the actions and processes that lead to the construction of an AHP identity. So because of that, I ruled out ethnography. I considered phenomenology. I love the fact that a few years ago I had no idea what these words even meant. So it's just bizarre that these things exist out there and you've got no idea. I wonder how much is out there that I still don't understand. So phenomenology seemed like a good idea as well, because that was looking at perhaps the tension between the AHP workforce and national policy. But I was looking for more than that. I didn't want just a description. I wanted something that would give me an explanatory framework. So I ruled out phenomenology. And then I presented it. It was going to be a case study. And then Hilary and Sally turned around to me and went, no, I think that's grounded theory. And the more I looked into grounded theory, like Janet said, it just felt like it fitted. It was just me and this other piece of a jigsaw connected. So started to explore grounded theory more. Excuse me. And appraised the different approaches to grounded theory. Got lost in that world for a while. And looking at that sort of historical progress, looking at the classic grounded theory of Glaser and Strauss. And I think the bit that then didn't fit with me was probably, it didn't fit with my research paradigms. They seemed more in pursuit of an objective truth, which wasn't compatible with where I was sitting, and also that researcher positionality. So
1 minute, one minute left.
Gosh. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
So then moved on to Strauss and Corbin. Felt like a better fit, but they were more of a neutral researcher position. And then I came across Kathy Sharma's, and that felt like that was the right approach. It was that co-construction, acknowledging my position, and that joint creation, development of shaping of the data felt like the right fit. So this is where I'm at now. The constructivist grounded theory will help to embrace my researcher positionality rather than me fighting with it, and doing so in a way that will help provide that explanatory theory that's properly grounded, has that groundedness in the experiences and perceptions of the AHPs, and that then ultimately all of that then meets the original research purpose, and in doing so has that greater goal of influencing future practice, locally my practice, but also nationally through policy, influencing the greater practice with that wider knock-on effect of retaining our staff, giving them a positive staff experience, and all of that ultimately positively impacting patient experience. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thanks. Thank you, Pippa. I didn't know that's what you were researching. That's really cool. So yeah, and as an OT by clinical background, that's quite cool. Yeah, lovely. So let's open the floor. Thank you so much for sharing your purpose and then your your pattern, and then why grounded theory. Seems to make sense to me. Any questions in the chat, or any thoughts from anybody? Please just speak if you wish to have a question.
Can I speak? Yeah.
Yeah, please
Yeah.
do. Please.
Yeah, I'll say I found that interesting, Pippa, in the sense that I kind of like related to your reasoning in terms of your philosophical stance and what you wanted to achieve. And yeah, constructivist grounded theory seems to be the best after going through reading different grounded theory myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, very interesting. Maybe because it's also similar to what I'm doing.
Yeah. No spoilers there. We need to.
No.
I think Arla had the hand up. Is that right? First, and then Hilary. Arla? Alam Ahmed.
I think that hand's been taken down, so we have.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, question from Hilary. Sorry about that. No, you're very welcome. Hilary, what would you like to ask?
Hi, Pippa.
Hello again.
Pippa, I was really interested when you said you were lost in the grounded theory types. What advice would you give to somebody trying to figure out what kind of grounded theory might be most useful to their research purpose?
I think it was a bit arse about face, because I think I was guided towards the constructivist approach. I think, supervisors recognised that may well be the best approach for me. So it wasn't like I, was finding my own way. But in terms of then starting to write and think and justify and defend why I chose that, then I've had to go back and look at the others. And some of the text that I found really useful is the Burks and Mills text, because it's just a really good light-hearted. I wouldn't say that, but just a good, easy read overview of the different approaches, which then enables you to get that grasp of understanding and how they differ, and then you can go back and read a little bit more. Go through the discovery of grounded theory. Look at Glaser and Strauss's texts. But without being completely overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you start at the very beginning with Glaser and Strauss?
No, so I started. So I was guided towards the Sharmas anyway. So I got her book, and then I was listening to Oliver Thompson's podcasts, and Burks and Mills were on there, and they were talking about their story, and they were told that their supervisors told them to read those books, historically, step by step. And then obviously they're telling it through their perspective, and said, don't do that, just read our book first, get an idea, and then go back and review the others. So that's the approach that I've done. And actually I found that really helpful. I found their text really good at just giving me that kind of superficial confidence that I could understand roughly what the differences were, what to look for. So then I have gone back and looked at the other texts, which aren't as big and scary as I thought they were going to be.
Interesting. Thanks, Pippa. Thanks.
I found YouTube videos very helpful. When I was told to work out whether I knew enough about grounded theories, I just searched on YouTube, and there's some excellent things explaining what there is to give you a base. Obviously, the textbooks are good too. Cool. Thank you, Maxine.
Yeah, I'll just back up what Pippa said. I watched YouTube as you did, Janet. Excellent stuff, and good if you are that type of learner as well. But I read Burks and Mills, and I found them intensely readable and understandable. Not patronizing, not the Idiot's Guide to, but a really good overview. And then I went back and read Glaser, 1967. Oh my goodness. Yeah, wow. And then I carried on and read Strauss and Colburn. And I sort of created a pros and cons column for each one, so that I could put that in my thesis to defend why I then ended up with constructivist grounded theory like Pippa's doing, but also I then thought about how it fitted with my ontology and epistemology. And I found all of that helped me flag up a clear understanding of my epistemology and ontology. So there's different ways of achieving it, but as long as you end up at the same final point, that you can have a solid defense, I think it will depend on your learning styles and operating styles, really, working styles. Yeah.
And I think that your approach to the research, grounded theory being iterative, it just feels like this whole process as well is iterative. You think you've got it. I don't know, like for me, reading Sharma's, and then you go back and you read Glaser and Strauss, and that makes you think, justifies, like you said, your pros and cons of why you've done that. I think you're just learning each time, and each time you go back to these things, it adds another layer of understanding.
Can I just ask you one more question, Pippa, and then we're going to move on, if that's all right. Thank you, everybody. So there's a question in the chat here from Farah, says, how many interviews and when are you going to finish data collection? I think that was when you're going to finish, not and when are you going to finish. I think the tone was quite, goodness, when are you going to finish?
I think I finished. So yeah, so I think I was talking to Hilary about this. I think I reached probably theoretical sufficiency, maybe 11 interviews, maybe about 14, I don't know. But then I've carried on to make sure that I've got a good coverage of as many of the different professions as I possibly could. I had 23 booked in, and my last one's dropped out, but actually it makes no difference to the overall the richness of the information that I've got. So so 22 interviews I've got, I think.
There's more I want to know, but I really want to move on too. So the question that I don't need an answer for is the process is how these people form a collective identity, and is your proposition, you don't have to answer it though, that having a collective identity will therefore impact upon retention? You don't need to answer it, but that's what came across there, that you're looking at retention, and the way you want to make sure there is good retention is by helping people form
to belong to something.
Okay, very good, wonderful.
Thank you.
Excellent. Just wondered. Lovely. Great. So thank you very much, Pippa. That's wonderful. So I'm going to move on now to Hannah, who's going to share with us about what is the purpose of her research and why is grounded theory a good fit. I can't actually see Hannah, but I'm hoping that she's, there she is.
I'm still here.
Well, great. Hi.
Hi,
welcome.
Everyone. Thank you. And thank you, Pippa. That was really reassuring. I think I'm probably about a year and a half behind you, so it's reassuring to see where hopefully I could be in a year. Okay, let's get myself sorted. Hopefully we can see that. There we go. So hopefully that's all right. So thinking about the question, why grounded theory and this idea of teachers being research engaged. So I'm a lecturer at the moment at Anglia Ruskin, but I lecture in education, and I was a primary school teacher, and this idea of teachers being research engaged was always something that I was interested in. And when I started as for most of us, I think, when I started the doctoral program, this looked really different. It was a really different question, and I was in a very different place. And I think grounded theory really helped me to shape what I was doing, as well as what I'd found out. So the context behind it really was that there's been a big drive in education for teachers to use research as part of their practice, to inform practice. There's been lots of policy developments and lots of supportive measures that have been put in place for teachers to engage with research. And there's lots of evidence to suggest that research enhances practice, and it's a good thing. But despite all of these initiatives, there are several over a period of about 10 to 12 years, including the Research Schools Network, there's evidence to suggest that teachers still face barriers when they're accessing research and using research to inform practice. And so when you drill down a little bit into that, the research suggests that there's lots of explanations for why there's this research practice gap. So there's things to do with leadership buy-in, the fact that there needs to be a supportive environment, and that needs to be created by the school, and there's this top-down approach to research. Then there's the disappointment sometimes that teachers face, where they read a piece of research, they try and put it into practice, and it's not this instant results. The results don't emerge readily. They don't get the outcomes that were suggested by the research that have tried to apply, and so there's a bit of disengagement there. But when you think about the context of the research, it really it focuses on this wider profession as a whole, leadership as a whole, and the institution really. And when we think about that, that is important, but there's not very much where teachers' voices are heard. There's not very much of asking teachers, you know, we put all of these things into place, what's actually going on? What do they actually do when they utilize this academic knowledge or try and put that into practice in the classroom? So the questions that came out of that are, how are teachers research engaged? So how do teachers make use of educational research to inform their practice? What are the factors that facilitate the use of that research, and what are the factors that perhaps inhibit the use of research in the classroom? So that's what comes out of the reading that I've done so far. And when I thought about the methodology that I was going to use, like Janet said, grounded theory seemed to fit. And when I talk about methodologies with undergraduate students on the education courses, we talk about them, and the students actually said to me, oh, it's like in Harry Potter, it's like a wand, like the wand chooses the wizard. It felt a little bit like that, to be honest, for me. Everything I went and I tried to fit my project into, I would always go back to grounded theory as the place that felt like this is what is going to help me to do what I want to do. And there was this idea of the explanation of patterns and trends. So answering, how do teachers experience research use in schools? What are the patterns and trends that emerge from that? And then there is a bit of concern about why, when so much has been done for teachers, why are we still not able to really see the outcomes of that? So what is the process? What are the barriers from the perspective of the participants? When we're thinking about the people at ground zero who are trying to use research, what are the barriers to research use in the classroom in everyday practice? So that was my why grounded theory. And then I had a lovely moment in the middle of last year, and I spent a lot of time trying to find and screenshot the tweet, but I couldn't find it. So it was on Twitter, and it was Alex Quigley, who's a big writer in education and about helping teachers to use research in practice. And what he said was, we need to talk to teachers about research use in the classroom. We need to get it really from their perspective. And what I didn't want was another piece of research that was almost done to teachers. I didn't want to just go in with like an action research approach or something where I was going to suggest from my own perspective and using my own ideas how I think research needs to be implemented in the classroom, or how I think it can be done. What I discovered really was that we need to talk to teachers, and I think that grounded theory will enable me to do that. But there are still the potential things to think about, and I'm very early in this stage of unpicking where I am, where I'm going, what I think, and how that links up to the methodology. So one of the things that I thought about when I was making this presentation was, how do I gather the experiences of teachers that do not think they're research active, perhaps don't want to get involved in the project, because really they are very important voices as well. I think in the project, thinking about, you know, if you don't think you're research active, are you not going to engage with that, and is that an issue? And then, like Pippa said, why is it grounded theory and not phenomenology? And we'll go back and forward between that a little bit. And obviously there'll be many more potential things to think. I didn't want to call them problems. They're not really problems, but things to think about, I think was better. And so that's really it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Hannah, thank you. That was really, really helpful and useful. I like that we're all at different stages and that we're finding our way through and we can hear off each other. Yeah, questions, please. I can see one from Hilary. Oh no, she's clapping. She's not questioning. Anything else? Yeah, clap, clap, clap. Pippa's got a question, but others, please ask your questions.
That was fabulous. Thank you very much. I wondered, your last bit where you were saying, is it grounded theory or is it phenomenology? What are your thoughts around that at the moment?
I feel like I need that explanatory, like the explain bit. I feel like that. I don't know. It's the honest answer. I'm still very much going backwards and forwards between the two. I do really think it's grounded theory, and I really like it, and I think that's a bit of a problem, isn't it, when you shouldn't do it just because you like it, but I do really like it, and I do really feel it fits, and I think there's a lot for me to still unpack with the whole, is it phenomenology? I think that's a very hard discussion I have to have with myself, but I do think the more I need it, I want to create an explanatory model for what is going on. Yeah. And why we've done all of these different things and they're still not working, and what is it? You know, there's that sort of need, I feel.
And I guess the what is going on is the process, isn't it? Because grounded theory it's a theory about a process. You said what is going on, so if there's something going on, that implies a process, doesn't it? Cool. Yeah, maybe, but obviously it's the best methodology, so that's the way to go. Alex has got a question.
Hi,
hi Alex.
Hi, thank you so much for organising the session and both presentations so far. They've been so helpful. I'm really at the beginning of my grounded theory journey, so I really appreciate it. And I was just wondering if you could reflect on, I've been reading a bit about kind of trying to avoid bringing too much from kind of what you know from previous research into your current project, kind of allow it to start from your data. And I was just wondering, not done it before, and how you'd been finding that, kind of especially when your research is almost about research. So yeah, just anything.
I guess it's the bit around the edge, isn't it? Like trying to figure out what is going on. That's what I was trying to do, more than delving into what do teachers do, what is going on around the edge that perhaps means that we need to figure out what's going on in the classroom. And I think it is I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I think it's a fine line to tread, isn't it? And I try very hard. I know there's a question from Hilary about reflexivity. And I do try and think, and I think that is why I think grounded theory will be a good vehicle almost, because it will force me in some respects to think about not what I think, and also to address, you know, this is how I might do it, but that's not what the methodology is getting me to do. The methodology is getting me to think about what is going on for these people who are in the classroom, what is going on for teaching as a collective. And so I think that's another reason. It's kind of multifaceted, isn't it? Another reason why grounded theory would be good for this.
Cool. And so linking into Hilary's question, how are you unpacking your reflexivity in relation to your decision making?
To be honest, I'm just trying to get through the ethics process.
Excellent. Good. Let's park that question. Good question. Let's come back to that in a year's time. Excellent. Good. But I would like to recommend the presuppositional interview And I do believe that our Nikki has got a bit in the New Mills and Burke's book about the presuppositional interview, and there's an excellent article about to be published also. Very good. Cool. But it's really good. Let's go to Nikki for a question now.
It's not a question really, but I was gonna share my idea around reflexivity and kind of like answering on your behalf, Hannah. I would say what I found useful myself has been reflexivity really, and because my study as well is one of those where I've been involved, so I am fully aware that potentially, so I've been posing questions everywhere and saying, is this the voices of the participants, or am I now over? So if you keep reflecting, you realize that actually it will be very, so you reflect, I reflected right from the beginning, and I reflected even the dilemma that I had, and all those things, they do help. So when you look back towards the end of your thesis, you actually find all those reflections very useful. I've actually gone back and thought, oh, so this is what I was thinking then. Yeah.
I guess we can reflect on the memos as well, can't we? The memos are like an interpretive conversation with the self, I do believe. And then we can reflect on our conversation with ourselves. It's just, and so on. Okay, there's a couple of questions in the chat as well, here from Arlem. Did you need a long time to understand and apply the rooted theory with the teachers? I'm not sure if you are, I don't know what stage you're at yet, really.
So I still carry around my emotional support books everywhere. And I feel like I'm still very much trying to get to grips with understanding grounded theory, and at that stage of, I've got the bags of Mills,
excellent,
that, and then I've got a big, like, more scary book to try and get through. So I would say yes, in short, a long time, and it's still going. So yeah,
I go back to the books at each stage. Now I'm now on, I did 200 and something words of the discussion today, so I'm looking at, I want to know about how to integrate theory, so I go back to the book and read the chapter on integrating theory. So I tend to, each time now I'm doing focus coding, let's read all the books on focus coding, so sort of integrating it. Yeah, cool, great. Any more questions before we move on to our last sharer of her work? Any more questions for Hannah? Oh, great, lovely. Hi, Quinette.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah, nice.
Yes. I'm excited about this group, first of all. I'm at the University of Houston, and in the US, and I teach grounded theory to doc students. So it's really awesome to hear the different phases that you are in and hearing about your work. So thank you for that. Hannah, my question to you is, like, are you leaning more towards a particular approach of grounded theory that fits with you and that's resonating with you in terms of what you want to do and how you want to do it? Yeah, so like I'm curious. I'm hearing Charmaz, but I don't know if that's but I'm also biased because I use Charmaz as well. But I'm curious to know, are you leaning more towards one, or given where you're at?
Yeah, at the moment, I think I would agree, like leaning really towards the Charmaz, the constructivist grounded theory. But again, I think the advice from the group has been really good about, going back to and just justifying your decision. And I think I still need to do, I think that's where I'm going, but I think I still need to do that. So I've got that really strong rationale for it.
Yeah. I have an article, I'll drop in the link to an article, Open Access on Grounded Theory, by a nurse who talks about it from, like, showing very easily Glaser and Strauss and Corbin, and then Charmaz. So I'll share the link in the chat.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's really useful once you've got your ontology and epistemology straight. It almost becomes obvious which way you're going, which is something that Pippa was doing, wasn't it? It's like, well, I think like this, therefore I think knowledge is constructed like that, therefore I'm obviously a blur. So I think that's also a really helpful thing to think through. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Hannah. That's wonderful. And as Nikki has just said in the chat, do a pre-supposition interview. Yeah, really good. And thanks, Quinette, for that link there. It's in the chat if anybody wants to find it. So that'll be on the recording as well. Brill, thank you, thank you, thank you. Brilliant. So we're going to go to Nikki now, who is not at Anglia Ruskin, is somewhere else, but lives down the road from where I do, 150 miles away from Anglia Ruskin. So welcome, Nikki. I'm so glad you've agreed to share with us. Thank you. You're on mute. So when you're ready, that would be wonderful for you to share. We actually found we worked with similar people and all sorts. It's very...
Right, let me just try and share. Just 2 minutes, guys.
Okay, no worries. We've got lots of people, haven't we? It's wonderful. Are you okay? Do you need any help?
I'm just trying to share.
Do you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm sharing, trying to share, and I'm trying to find my presentation.
So you have your presentation open on your screen?
Yeah, I've got that open on my screen, and oh goodness me, I don't want to leave the meeting. Try again.
Sometimes if you can't share it direct, you can share your whole screen and then play it on your whole screen as an option.
Let me try again. Share. I'm on my share button. And has it come through?
No, sadly not.
Oh.
Do you want to email it me quickly? Or
Yeah, let me quickly email it to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I wondered if there was anybody who wasn't Sharmazian. That's a good word, isn't it? Sharmazian. Anybody who doesn't think that she's the best thing. She was an OT, you see, so that's kind of links into the...
Isn't Nikki
Nikki's just something else.
lazier?
Right now.
Oh, I don't think laser rules.
Janet, I am sending it to you. Attach. Okay. This computer. Sending it to you. Doesn't have any subject. Can you see it?
While it's coming through, there was a question about saturation versus sufficiency, which I think was possibly as a result of Pippa's presentation.
I missed that one.
But it's kind of like worth opening up. Yeah, I think Pippa referred to having achieved theoretical sufficiency rather than saturation. I'm just interested in her perspective on that.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki, for that.
You're welcome.
It's sufficiency. It's within this context, this time of now, recognizing that it could potentially change saturation.
Is it coming?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then someone else had asked a question about whether how many professions, so it was 11 of the 14 professions, and did that affect sufficiency? And it didn't. It seems to be similar themes across all the professions. Over to you, Nikki.
Okay.
Oh, and that's beautiful. Well worth waiting for. Thank you. Right, over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll start. And 5 minutes is very short. It's very short time, but I will try my best. So I just gave you this picture just to say this is my usual place. I mean, in my head, and I do have some woods nearby where I live, but they're not as beautiful as this. But every time when I'm writing my thesis, I've got to visit them. It's as if I've got to go and get something from there and then come back and write.
Wow.
So I am a mental health nurse by background, but I'm a lecturer in mental health nursing. Yeah, so I've been for over 10 years now, I've been in education. So my thesis title is Critically Exploring Clinical Supervision in acute mental health wards, a constructivist grounded theory study. So at the back of yours, Hannah, where you were also a teacher, so I was also a nurse. And clinical supervision is a support tool that is used in social work, in allied health, and I know mainly in psychotherapy. Yeah. So when I moved to academia, I then thought nurses needed really a lot of support, but then I wasn't getting it. So there's a lot of background why I chose my study, but then I always drop. So I'll try by all means to address what is the purpose of my research. So like I said, to make changes was the biggest thing because I've been involved and I thought nurses were not supported as well as they needed to. And why is grounded theory a good fit as a methodology? Interestingly, for me, I first chose participatory action research. So action research was my first choice. And I did all the work towards action research. I did all the reading, I started writing, and I collected my first data. And after collecting my first data, COVID hit. Right now, I couldn't proceed. As you know, in action research, you've got to have the first phase, then it feeds onto the second phase, and then it feeds onto the next. And clinical areas at that point during COVID, as you all know, they couldn't do any research, they couldn't do any other activities other than just nursing very poorly people. So I was really at a point where I'm in a very dark place in terms of my research, because now I was thinking, what am I going to do? Do I need to start the whole thing? And I'd gone that far up to data collection. So, but then there was no way I could go back to practice to collect my data from nurses and managers. So then in the end, I had, my supervisor suggested a grounded theory, but then they didn't say which one. So like the previous two speakers, I got all the books. I got Chalmers's books, I got Strauss and Corbin, I got Becks and Mills, and like I said, Becks and Mills tends to be the easiest to read. So I read all those books. And then at the same time, I then went back and said, what is it that I've been trying to achieve here so that it can inform my methodology? So what I was trying to achieve is change. So I want to make improvements. I want to change the status quo. So I looked at participatory action research and constructivist grounded theory. So after reading all the different grounded theories, and like others have said, it was difficult in the sense that when I read Chalmers's, I was like, oh, I get this one. I read Becks and Mills, so yeah, I think I understand what it is. But then again, when I went to Strauss and Corbin, I was a little bit confused with all the stages and all things that were there. And then in the end, I had to put the two aside. So I just thought for participatory action research, it's a cyclical research process involving act, plan, observe, and reflect. And so my original idea was, just like Hannah said, because there's a lot of research around clinical supervision and there's a lot of suggestions around clinical supervision, I wanted to go on this journey and these changes, I want to make the changes together with the nurses. So that was my ultimate aim. So I thought, yeah, so for action research, it was gonna go through that and with the nurses themselves. And I looked at action research as well. I said it reflects a reflection was throughout the study. So I was gonna reflect as I went through, as you can see, plan, act, observe. And then I thought, similar to constructivist grounded theory, where reflection goes through, you know, memo writing. And also I thought with constructivist grounded theory, it's cyclical in nature as well. And you
1 minute left, 1 minute.
All right.
I know.
And I thought co-production of knowledge between me and the participants, so that was the same as constructivist grounded theory, was going to go participants, researchers, and the empirical data. And the fact that research is guided through a constructivist paradigm, and the same as in action research, and same as the constructivist grounded theory. So I just thought I'll share with you my journey so far. So I've done 2 literature reviews. So I maintained the one that I had already done, and I called it the preliminary literature review. And then later on, I then did a focus literature review. And then I did my methods. For my methods, I went with the focus groups because that's exactly what was easy in terms of not only easy, but then practical in terms of the nurses. And I justified my methodology, and my sample size is very small because for action research, it was meant to be 8. It was very a small sample size. Anyway, I maintained the 8 participants that I had and the 3 managers. But then the beauty about it is that I managed to go back to the nurses twice, and I went back to the managers twice. And then it goes back to the question maybe that some people are asking, did I really reach saturation? So that's something else that I'm discussing, and whether is it more in terms of sample size or is it quality? And then I did my data analysis, and I've done my initial coding, my focus coding, and my theoretical coding. And I found 7 categories, and my main theory, my main category being seeking meaningful and adaptable clinical supervision. So that's the meaning that I've got through all the interlinking categories. Yeah, and I've gone on to discuss my thesis, and I've drawn on my strengths and my limitations and my uniqueness. And I've looked back, and I've found that in terms of constructivist grounded theory, they talk more about credibility, resonance, originality, and usefulness. So I've been able to write about these. And
You've got to stop it.
That's where I am at the moment.
Excellent.
And that's the end of my talk.
Nikki, well done. Thank you. That was a whistle-stop tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. We have like 2 minutes for questions and any comments. There's some in the chat actually already. I think yeah, that's cool.
Yes, I have justified, and I also justified in the sense that it is very difficult to get nurses, especially in acute wards, to participate in research. Just maybe found Hannah as well.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? That was really useful. Seems like you're a bit further on than Hannah and Pippa, and that's really good. We've got the different spread of things there. I think sample size seems to be getting, and sufficiency seems to be getting people really interested. See, it's really interesting, Nikki, you've got a small sample size. Yeah. Was there anything about going to constructivist grounded theory that didn't fit? Did you have to do anything really different because it wasn't action research?
I don't know. What I found, like I say, after reading, it did fit, and especially when I looked at what I was trying to achieve with action research and what I was, so it did fit, especially with constructivist grounded theory. It really fitted well. And like I say, I used a lot of memos, and I went back to my memos to reflect. Yeah.
I think fundamentally, because you said very much that you want to bring about change, and I started my journey wanting to bring change too, but then realized I had to understand first. And I guess that's possibly where you're at. You're understanding what the problem is, and then you can bring about change. So maybe that's your next research project, maybe. So once you've understood, change becomes easier.
So somebody said they've heard something about a study that found exactly that CPs are great at participating. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you for that.
We feel like we've rushed at the end there, but I found that really useful. Any other comments from anybody else before we just signpost what we're doing in our next session, which is where we want to stop? Any more questions? Thank you so much, Nikki. You haven't had many questions. Must have been all conclusive.
I hope so.
Cool. Thank you, Nikki.
I think there's got a raised hand.
Yeah, there's a
I missed the raised hand. Oh, yeah, there we are. Hiba, please
Oh,
share.
hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Hiba from Saudi Arabia.
Wow. Wow, we've really spread. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm assistant professor in King Faisal University in Saudi Arabia, and I got my PhD from Sheffield University.
Ah, wow, great.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I did several research using qualitative methodologies such as case study, narrative, ethnography. But I would like to do a research using grounded theory, but I still I don't understand how to analyze it, because I'm familiar with thematic analysis, but it's different, the grounded theory. And another inquiry, how can I, or how do I write the finding and discussions? I think it's maybe something different. So these questions, I still don't understand them.
And they're great questions. And that was one thing that I wondered, just as we're finishing now, if people had other things they wanted to talk about within this format, within this setting, yeah, please share, because we're trying to pitch it at different levels. We know that some people are just starting out, some people are considering grounded theory, some people are almost at the end. And we want to be a supportive community to support each other there. How to write findings, yeah, that's good. I'm grappling with that one. I'd like to know how to write a discussion, having written 200 words. I need to, that would be cool. Great. Thank you, Hiba. Great questions there. Some other things appearing in the box of things that we'd like to discuss. So anything that you think we could find out here, the different types of coding, I think would be quite interesting to look at. And what exactly is a memo as opposed to a reflective diary? I think that would be really interesting to hear different people's perspectives on those things. Cool, so keep writing those. Meanwhile, I think, Pippa, are you going to tell us about what's happening in the next session, or certainly the date of the next session?
Yep, so the date of the next fabulous session like this will be the 14th of June. So put it in your diaries now. Probably a similar sort of time slot, if that suits everyone. So either 1 till 2 or 2 till 3 like today, depending on your time zone for you international visitors. And the thoughts about what we could do next. So Nikki, who's here, who's asked quite a few questions in the chat, has his Viva the day after our next meeting. And we thought it might be quite useful for Nikki and for all of us to have a little think about what the Viva section relating to grounded theory methodology might look like, and the kind of questions that you might get asked. So between now and then we'll build a bit of a plan around that, but it might involve Nikki sharing his abstract and us putting together any kind of questions that we can think of that some very supportive examiners might ask someone like Nikki, and ask people like us in the future when we get to that point. How does that sound?
I think it's great to go to that's kind of towards the end of the project. And I think maybe that's a really good place to go next. And then I'd like to visit some of these things that are appearing in the chat for maybe our next session, things that you do earlier on. So when you're starting out, like Alex was saying, we're starting out, it all seems a bit of a mystery. And like, what are the differences? What is the difference? Thematic analysis versus coding. What's the difference? Codes and categories, what's the difference? Which were Hiba's points, really. So I'm thinking maybe something like that next as well, really useful. And now there's some great questions coming in here. And like Mohammed's question, how do we stay connected with the whole GT community? How do we share our views? I wondered if Maria, if you wanted to speak to that, because I know you run the grounded theory.
Sure, no, I'm just responding to some of the things in the chat now. So we obviously have a mailing list which we contacted most people on to invite them to today's session. So we can certainly add your details to that. We have the Eventbrite site. So if you register there, then each time we host a new event, you'll get notified of that up and coming. And then there's the Grounded Theory Twitter account and blog. if you wanted to sign up to those, then again, you'll get notifications as soon as there are.
But that's a good place to debate as well, isn't it? On the Twitter site, there's been some really good debates through the Grounded Theory Twitter site. Have you got the Twitter? Is it just called?
It's just called at Grounded Theory. Yeah.
As it says on your name on the screen.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to connect up and to link with each other.
People are really supportive there, so it's
yeah.
worth kind of like following that.
Yeah, lovely. Cool. I like the questions in here, and we've got those saved as well. Exactly. When do you know that you're ready to start focus coding? And what's the difference between normal coding and focus coding? And yeah, I absolutely.
And also the good thing about thinking about the Viva is that is what we should all be thinking about when we're starting to write, is making sure that we're writing for our audience, which is our examiners at this stage. So so although these bits were, all adds up, doesn't it? But I'm sure Nikki's very under the spotlight now of knowing that that's what it's all about for us.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for all participating. I would really like this to be an interactive space, not a one person speaks and the others observe. Unless you don't feel you can speak, that's perfectly fine. But I think we've had some really good chats today. Lots of people have spoken, and that's great. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's meet via the Twitter group or the blog if you want to carry on the conversation. And we look forward to seeing you in June, so 14th of June. And I'm kind of hearing that 2 o'clock's a good time. I think in Saudi it was 6 o'clock now, so 3 o'clock here, 6 o'clock there. June, we've changed, haven't we? We've gone to British summertime, so we've gone a bit further forward, so it should be a bit nearer for you. And that's not too bad for America. I think it's a bit rubbish. I think somebody wanted to join from Australia. I think it's a bit rubbish. Bit rubbish for Australia, but oh well, they have to show their commitment by being up all night. Thank you so much for joining us all, and thank you to our speakers. So thank you to Nikki, thank you to Hannah, thank you to Pippa, and until we meet again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Janet, for hosting too.
All right, have a good day. Yeah, no worries. See you soon. Bye. Bye.